Welcome to meeting 126, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, of course known widely as the mighty OGO. Before we start, I want to remind everyone, keep your microphones away or keep your earpieces away from your microphones at all times so that we are protecting the health of our very valued translators. We will do this for 1 hour, then we're going to suspend for about 5 minutes. We'll switch over to PSPC, and I need about 30 seconds at the end of the meeting to approve 3 small budgets, please. We'd like to welcome back TBS. Ms. Boudreau, your final meeting with TBS with OGO. Congratulations on your new appointment. And we'll give the floor to you for 5 minutes and 1 bonus second in recognition of your promotion to Comptroller General. Use that 1 second wisely, Ms. Boudreau. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur le Président. I want this opportunity to follow up on questions about the main estimates in last Wednesday's meeting with the President of Treasury Board and her officials as requested by the committee. Dépenses réelles et prévues.
With regards to the expenses, with regards to their secretariat, with regards to expenses, the main budget for 24-25 includes $5.5 billion in planned spending. Of this amount, $45.7 million is dedicated to TBS program spending in its central agency role, acting as the administrative arm of Treasury Board. This is comparable to the $44.1 million in actual spending that the department incurred and reported in its Departmental Results Report 2022-2023. The remaining balance is made up of funds for central appropriations, which are transferred from TBS to individual departments and agencies throughout the year, once specific criteria have been met. Central credits are used to supplement other credits according to eligibility criteria. For example, 2 credits are used to carry forward unspent amounts within established limits from one fiscal year to the next. Another example, the compensation needs credit is used to reimburse organization for certain types of expenses, such as maternity and parental benefits, as well as severance pay.
Funding from central votes will report on this funding as part of their own departmental reporting. Groupe de travail sur le projet de loi C-280.
Working Group on Bill C-290, another issue concerning the budget for the task force examining the Public Servants Disclosure Protection Act. In the 2022 budget, $2.4 million over 5 years was earmarked for the review of this act starting in 2022-2023. This budget is still considered sufficient to support the work of the task force and has not been adjusted since. Expenditure to date has been as follows: 2022-2023, $37,000 salaries, $16,535 operations and maintenance, 2023-2024, $223,000 salaries, $25,323 operations and maintenance, and finally 2024-2025 forecast, $285,972 salaries, $35,250 operations and maintenance. These salary funds paid for staff to support the working group, including organizing meetings, preparing documents, meeting with stakeholders, and carrying out research. Working group members volunteer their time and expertise. Operating and maintenance expenses covered travel costs to Ottawa for non-Ottawa based task force members, for in-person meetings, translation, and headsets for virtual meetings. Service standards. Finally, on the subject of service standards, allow me to say that the Government of Canada offers many distinct and important services such as EI and OAS, border services, food inspection, and passports, to name but a few.
Delivered under diverse operational conditions by departments with differing mandates and funding levels. Different services have different standards because they operate under a variety of conditions for a diverse set of clients. Une bonne norme de service
A good service standard is clear, measurable, and ambitious, but also realistic. It takes into account the department's ability to deliver the services expected by Canadians under normal operating conditions. These standards are regularly reviewed and updated as required. An 80% success rate in achieving a standard means that we can expect the vast majority of the public to receive the service intended, while taking into account the fact that some cases are more complex, that the operating environment may be subject to unusual stresses, and that the technical and human errors might occur from time to time. If service standards are met at 100%, this means that the standard is too low, that too many resources have been allocated to the service, or that it is underused, or that there's an error in the standard report. This concludes my speech.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Mrs. Cusi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to our witnesses for being here today, and félicitations, Madame Boudreau.
Congratulations on your nomination.
Madame Boudreau, le Conseil du Trésor devait donner le nom des fonctionnaires qui avaient des conflits d'intérêts tout en travaillant pour le gouvernement du Canada. Cette information devait être envoyée au compte public d'ici le 31 mai et on attend toujours cette information. Est-ce qu'elle a été soumise? Nous allons devoir changer à la table. Mes collègues vont pouvoir répondre à cette question pour vous. Je vais suspendre quelques secondes parce que...
Very low.
Well, it's actually the French translation that's coming in the background.
Indicating we are waiting for these names. When will they be provided, please?
Good morning. My name is Heidi Coots. I ADM People and Culture, associate ADM at People and Culture in Oak Crow Treasury Board. Good morning. And with respect to that question, I can advise that the response to the question of the committee was deposited late on Friday.
Excellent. Will this information be sent to the Government Operations Committee as well, please?
On that, I would certainly defer to parliamentary relations and relations between the committees, but I understand that that could be facilitated.
Okay, excellent. Given that this information has been submitted, can you please give an indication as to the dollar amount then of contracts that were found to be in conflict of interest, please? What was the total amount that was found to be in this unique situation?
Thank you for the question. I do not have the detailed information on hand, so won't be in a position to respond to that question today.
Can you provide a number of the individuals and the corporations, the consultants that were found to be in this conflict of interest situation in addition to the total amount of contracts, please?
I can, sorry if you can bear with me for just a moment, can advise that the information requested covered the periods of 2022 and 2023 with respect to individuals who had articulated a conflict of interest with respect to a contracting relationship. And the information that has been provided,
I apologize because I don't see it.
Oh, it's fine, Madam Coots.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I do have the answer.
Okay, excellent, thank
79
you.
in 2022, 2023, and 84 in 2023, 2024. Sorry for the delay.
Okay. Sorry, one more time, please. That number was?
79 in the
Okay.
in fiscal year 22, 3, and 84 in fiscal year 23, 24.
Okay, and you don't have the dollar amount of those 79?
I do not.
Okay, thank you so much. Of those 79, how many were referred to the RCMP, please?
I guess with reference to individuals submitting conflict of interest declarations, that's the initiation of a process where an individual is understood to be in a perceived actual or possible future conflict of interest. The process of submitting those applications means that that is then reviewed, and if it is possible to mitigate those conflicts of interest, mitigation measures are put into place.
Can you share with Canadians, please, any wrongdoing that was detected? Basically, what I am discerning from your response is that you found 79 were in this conflict of interest. You cannot confirm the total dollar amount at this moment. Were they all referred to the RCMP? Is this what you're indicating?
No.
Okay.
Just to be clear, what I'd like to underscore is that the completion of a declaration does not signify or suggest any wrongdoing. Rather, it demonstrates that employees have acted in full compliance with rules and requirements in reporting the conflict. On the depositing of a conflict of interest declaration, the evaluation and the review is made as to whether or not the individual is in a real perceived or potential future conflict of interest. Mitigation measures are put into place where and as appropriate. Where mitigation measures cannot be put into place, the employee then has the decision whether or not to proceed with the contract or to
Okay,
step
pardon me.
aside.
So to be clear, because it's quite an extensive answer you're giving, but to be clear and simple for Canadians, did you refer them all to the RCMP, or you did not go through an internal process as to determine which ones to refer to the RCMP?
The information that has been provided and reported are the declarations of conflict of interest, which have been deposited and reviewed, where mitigation measures have been indicated and or put into place, and employees have taken a decision whether or not to apply those mitigation measures or to step aside. I wouldn't be able to advise on any reporting that resulted in any investigations by the RCMP.
Okay, then based upon this response, I'm hearing that the employees have to determine whether or not they are referring themselves to the RCMP. We have 79 individuals or corporations that were found to be within conflict. We don't know the dollar amount for Canadians. I would ask, please, Madame Boudreau, if your team could get this number and report it back to the committee. And the information has been reported to public accounts, and we hope that they will share it with government operations. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Baines, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our officials for joining us today. And Madam Boudreau, congratulations on your new appointment. My first question is to you, or anybody who can answer. The Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat has the 5th highest number of voted expenses in these maintenance estimates at $9.3 billion. What rationale is there behind the spending within your department, and how is there a value add for the Canadian taxpayer in the services delivered by TBS?
Thank you for the question. As I was mentioning during my opening remarks, all the central votes are included under TBS main estimates. Those votes, though, are reallocated after to organizations to allow them to continue delivering programs and services. I'll give you 2 examples. One of them is what we call the operating carry forward. At the end of the year, any organizations can carry forward 5% of their operating funding to be able to finish what they had started the previous year. It is a best practice. It was highlighted by the OAG a long time ago, and that avoids being in the March madness at the end of the year in order to spend all the money. We have the same mechanism for the capital vote carry forward, where organizations again can carry forward up to 20% in the next fiscal year in order to be able to finalize projects. And when it is allocated to departments, we are publishing every time a list on the website, and you will see the amount, specific amount for specific organization.
So is there like an efficiency measure that's built into this process?
So like I was saying, we are applying 5% for the operating. It is max 5%. Some organizations, sometimes they don't have that flexibility, but for those that do have the flexibility, it is 5%. In terms of the carry forward for the capital vote, we are doing some due diligence, looking at the amount, making sure that it is reasonable, and after that, we are allocating those amounts to organizations. So those are the two examples that we have in central votes for TBS.
Okay, my next question is around the modernizing of public service. So what ways is Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat working to modernize Canada's public service? How do you see the implementation of new technologies aiding in this work?
Stephen?
Thank you for the question. So the work we are doing across the board right now in terms of modernizing the public service, it takes on a number of aspects. Some of it has to do with the talent that we're recruiting into the public service and making sure that we are getting the right skills inside, so we have less of a dependency on contractors. Some of it has to do with making sure that we are upskilling existing public servants so that they have the digital acumen they need to work across these things. And some of it is in the technology space, where we're working with Service Canada and other service delivery departments to make sure that they are aligning tools and technology as well as the skills they have in order to modernize their services and make them available in the ways that Canadians have come to expect in the 21st century.
Okay, just on that same theme, security of information extremely important across government, and we know there's been many cyber attacks. We've witnessed London Drugs is headquartered in my city of Richmond, British Columbia. They had a cyber attack. We've seen now a Ticketmaster, I think 560 million people, data information that may be compromised. So foreign state actors, other aggressors, could you share how new funding programs through these main estimates can work to better protect the cybersecurity regime?
Absolutely. So I think it's important to remember, and the examples you cite make the point that every government and private sector organization out there is facing ongoing persistent cyber threats as part of the world that we are living in now. We have many systems and tools in place to monitor, detect, and investigate those threats and to mitigate against the effects of them, to address and neutralize them. And importantly, on May 22nd, just a couple weeks ago, we released the first federal government enterprise cyber strategy. We were certainly working in this space for a long time, but we've put a frame around it now to help drive that effort forward. And there's been a certain amount of money provided in the main estimates that will allow us to continue to enhance those efforts across the system.
Can you sort of see how you're going to pinpoint how is that framework going to help?
So the framework should give us the ability to, let me see if I can pull up some examples here for you, improve cybersecurity on operations, keep pace with the existing cyber risk landscape. We've had some enhancements to the Government of Canada's Cybersecurity Event Management Plan, which is a whole government incident response plan when these things do happen, and how we roll in and determine how serious it is and actually begin work with Shared Services Canada and the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity to actually drive these things forward. The work that we've done around defining our security policy to make sure that we build systems, we reduce the vulnerabilities on the technology side will be advanced by this effort. But a lot of the money is coming in to make sure that we have the right expertise in place, both centrally and across departments.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Baines. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Mrs. Boudreau, earlier, you spoke about the service standards and what this involves. I saw that we're at 46 or 49%. In 2023, 49% to reach the service standards. And this surprises me because as a civil, perhaps it's just me, but everyone wants to treat others as they want to be treated. So 49% for service standards, I find that concerning. And here the objective is 80. So that's a giant step. It's a huge gap. So how will the government reach this objective? Thank you for the question. What you're citing in your question, it was abnormally low service standard. These were results during the pandemic. And so we had a lot of upheavals in service provision, and of course we're not satisfied with the results. We're not satisfied with that result, and so now we've had a return to normal with regards to service delivery. So we expect a return to normal and to have results closer to the 80%, even though things might change. The first indications that we have right now suggest that March 2025, we will see an increase. Before the pandemic, what were the indicators? I don't have the figures with me, but they were closer to the 80. Could you provide the numbers as soon as possible? Thank you for the pre-pandemic numbers. I think that you're starting to know me, so I look at things. I look at the budget. I pick things apart. I take a lot of notes. And what I've noticed, I do notice one thing with regards to contributions to the we see a reduction of $20,000, sometimes more, to contribution to social benefits for employees. So how can you explain this reduction? Are there layoffs that are expected? How do you explain this? It's a good question. So maybe it's due to the fact that we are standardizing the methodology that we use. Do you have more information on this?
The employee benefit contributions in there are based on the employees in the departmental plans at the time of the main estimates. They obviously get updated through the year as programs get renewed and they come to Treasury Board. So the main estimates is the starting point, but there will be additions through the year as new programs come online as well.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. With regard to the economic development agencies for the Quebec region, I see on page 2 to 10 that contributions through this economic growth program for regional program through innovation goes through the main estimates 2023-2024 $265,700,000 to $166,910,505. It's a reduction of $99 million. And underneath this, contributions for economic development program for Quebec, there's a reduction of nearly half. So we go from almost $131 million to a little bit over 63. What explains this huge reduction? During the pandemic, there was even more, but now we're at 1/4 of the amount that it was during the pandemic. Well, how can you explain this? We'll have to come back, Mrs. Vignola, with the information, but if you compare the last year's budget, the total budget, with the current budget, we don't have the supplementary estimates BNC, and that can make a significant difference as well. So we're going to do the analysis, and we'll come back with the more detailed answer. Thank you. How much time do I have left?
1 minute.
Great. Wow. Okay. And so you explained this a little bit in your speech. I'm going to come back on the working group that is examining what happens with civil servants who are whistleblowers. This is a group of volunteers, I believe, and the amounts that are allocated, $2.4 million over 5 years, has to do with their expenses for traveling, for meetings, etc. Is this $2.4 million enough? Because we're talking about a working group that has to go through an act, a very important act, and the realities might be different depending on what region in Canada. As I was mentioning, this, I said it was, but my colleague in charge of the committee can provide more information. Yes, I can confirm that right now it is sufficient, and salaries. This covered the staff for the working group. We've organized some meetings. And it has to do with material and ensuring liaison with stakeholders and people involved in research. And of course, as you mentioned,
This is our time. Perhaps anything else you can provide to us in writing. Mr. Bachrach, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks to our witnesses. Happy Monday. My colleague and I were just discussing the funding for Pacifican in the budget, and it appears that there's a significant reduction, and I'm just wondering if you can explain the numbers that I'm looking at right now for 22-23, $219.8 million down to $118.4 million in the 24-25 budget. Can you explain the significant reduction in this organization that aims to diversify BC's economy? Certainly has an impact where I live.
Okay. Partial answer. We'll return at the same time as we do for the Quebec Regional Development Agency. We can just come back with a whole answer for all the regional development agencies. But in general, these organizations had significant funding through COVID that is winding down as we go through the year. So that's one aspect. Second thing to clarify, there was the refocusing government spending exercise. There were no reductions to the contribution programs through that exercise. So it's not that the money's been reallocated elsewhere. It is primarily, I think, a wind down of COVID programs. We can get back with a more complete response.
So the economic development agencies, if I understand it, were a mechanism, a vehicle for delivering COVID funds. And now that those programs are wound down, we're seeing a commensurate reduction.
Correct.
Are the numbers that we see likely to be the numbers going forward? Is that considered sort of the base investment in those agencies, or?
I think we'd have to return in writing with that.
Okay, that would be good. At our last meeting, I asked a question of Minister Anand about the return to office mandate. I've received emails about this from public servants in Northwest BC, and there's a lot of concern and a lot of questions that folks feel haven't been answered. We sort of ran out of time. I think when I asked the question, it was deferred to the public service to explain the mandate, and then we ran out of minutes. So I'm wondering if someone can pick up where we left off from last week and provide the rationale, particularly in light of the evidence that suggests that productivity in the work-from-home environment was at least equal to what we were seeing prior to that with the in-office environment. I'll hand it over to our witness.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. The rationale is really to maximize the benefits of the presence in the workplace and to bring fairness and consistency across the public service. It is a minor calibration from 2 to 3 to 3. We're still in a hybrid model, therefore we respect and understand the benefits of off-site work. But we also recognize that some organizations were already at 3, and many employees have been working 5 days on site since the beginning of the pandemic. Recognizing the off-site benefits, work-life balance, completing individual tasks, time management, it's also important to recalibrate to really reap the benefits of on-site presence as well. Human connection matters, peer learning from each other, onboarding new employees, not only new to the public service, but new to teams, as well as having collision conversation, impromptu idea sharing, and team building. We feel that human connections are essential to strengthen the public service as an organization, its values, and its culture. The move is also very consistent with many provinces and territories. There are more flexible models out there, but this is bringing us closer to the trend. And just proactively saying that we have been working with PSPC to ensure that it aligns with their 10-year strategy of reducing the footprint by 50%. The key to that is to ensure that there's unallocated seating and that the model moves from a model that was experimental to one that is a bit more structured.
You mentioned collaborating with PSPC. The other organization that it seems like the government didn't collaborate enough with is PSAC. They're quite upset by this whole mandate. Can you describe your consultation with the public sector unions in the lead up to this mandate?
Thank you for the question. At the last collective agreement, there was a letter of agreement that was signed outside of the collective agreements to review the telework directive and to establish review panels and organizations. We have had several meetings with bargaining agents to review the telework directive, which is how you actually do telework. And those meetings have taken place. In terms of the location of work, it is and remains an exclusive management right. Therefore, on the move from 2 to 3, there was no consultation there. We informed the unions, as we informed many groups within the public service, of the change in direction.
It seems to me like, I understand there are benefits to working in the office. Certainly for some personality types, it's a preferable work environment, and others have more productivity in a remote work environment. But one thing that seems clearly obvious is that if employees are disgruntled, their productivity goes down, and it seems like the way that this directive has been handled by management has resulted in a lot of employees feeling like they're not valued, feeling like that the employer doesn't take the needs of their work environment seriously. How is the public service going to manage that impact? We've heard from PSAC that they're going to fight this. I'm getting emails from my constituents saying that the way that it's being rolled out in individual offices is deeply problematic. What's the strategy from here on in to get to a place where you're actually reaping the benefits of the return to the office?
I am afraid there's no time left for an answer, perhaps in your next round, or perhaps in a plan in writing to us. Mrs. Block, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. And Ms. Boudreau, I echo my colleagues. Congratulations to you on your new appointment and wish you well in that. The government made a commitment to implement a trust and transparency strategy. And recently they released an update in the manager's guide with 4 key updates. And the manager's guide is key considerations when procuring professional service. The first update is that managers should monitor and document the delivery services and ensure that obligations under the contract are met, including by subcontractors prior to issuing of payment. So in plain language, this means that managers should make sure that work is completed before paying. Was it a common practice to pay for work and to pay contractors without that work being completed?
Thank you for the question. So I wouldn't say it was a common practice. Let me just frame, there's the manager's guide, and then last week we announced mandatory procedures. And really this is about getting back to basics and having good hygiene when we do our procurement. And so in procurement, there's the contracting authority. So you hear a lot about procurement officers, but managers who are business owners also have accountabilities and responsibilities. And so what we're trying to do in plain language is make them sure that they're aware. And with the mandatory procedure, we're embedding it now into the approval process. So it's embedded into the structures.
Thank you. I appreciate you framing that for me. I have 5 minutes. And so just a really concise answer is really appreciated going forward. So in plain language, you needed to tell those who were paying contractors that the work actually had to be done before you pay them.
It was putting in plain language what is already required
Okay, thank you. The second update was that managers should exercise due diligence to maintain the integrity of a procurement, ensuring that obligations under the contract are met, including by subcontractors, prior to issuing payment. Was it common practice before this for managers to not monitor conflicts of interest?
I would say I couldn't answer that question. I don't monitor all contracts, but I would say we wrote it so that people were clear, not that we thought everybody was not doing it. That's really important.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to another part of the strategy that was announced. Your department announced its strategy, which is meant to provide better access to government data and improve trust in federal institutions. In fact, Minister Anand stated on last week on May 29th, and I'll quote, "As we continue to face an unprecedented surge in misinformation and disinformation, our government remains committed to the values of openness and transparency." And yet, there is a shortfall or a reduction in the Integrity Commissioner's budget. What steps have been taken to sort out the $700,000 budget shortfall for that office? And how does reducing that budget align with your limiting the budget of the independent officer that ensures federal institutions following the law?
Thank you for that very important question. If you look at the main estimates, you will see an increase of the budget. There is for sure a gap, the amount that you have referred to. I've met with the commissioner. My colleague also met with the commissioner. We're doing everything we can to understand the situation and to move forward. So we have options and solutions. But again, I just want to stress the fact that we see an increase in the main estimates for that budget.
So just to confirm, there's been an even greater shortfall. There's been some increase, but it isn't quite where it needs to be in order for the Integrity Commissioner to do their work.
So just to be clear, the gap that has been highlighted is based on a formula that we are using for all organizations across government. It is a formula that is flexible as well as that it is consistent for all the 90 organizations that are receiving money from Parliament. Don't know, Rod, if you want to add something?
I'm afraid we're past time already. Mr. Jouari, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll also join my colleagues to congratulating you, Madam Boudreau, for your appointment. And I'm going to focus my questions on the RGS, Refocus Government Spending. As you know, Madam Boudreau, your department is heavily focused on delivering on the Refocus Government Spending initiatives, and the main estimates provide some details on this, including a $2.5 billion reallocated funding. And that's up drastically from the $500 million from last fiscal year. How does this reallocation impact the services delivered by other departments, and what impact does this have on Canadian taxpayers?
Thank you for the question. As indicated in Budget 2023, so this exercise was meant to refocusing funds from lower priorities to higher priorities. The budget wording was really clear, so services to Canadians were not to be impacted, as well as Canadian Armed Forces budget and direct transfer to provinces, territories, and Indigenous communities. So we have followed the instructions coming from the budget while not impacting services to Canadians.
So there's no impact to the taxpayers. Okay, fair enough. So is this as a one-time initiative, or is this something that the departments should expect on an ongoing basis, on an annual basis, that they should be looking into identifying areas for better services, using different around 15%.
So this is a multi-year initiative. It started in budget 2023. It was also included in budget 2024, a second phase. The second phase in the budget 2024 talks about operating. And as you mentioned, I think it's just good hygiene in every organization to look at a budget to make sure that we are focusing on priorities. When I was the CFO of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, I was doing that work every year to make sure that the money was available for Canadians and for stakeholders.
Which department do you anticipate will see the greatest opportunity for benefiting from this program?
So if you look at the main estimates, you will find an online annex where you can see all the refocusing money between organizations. So I think we have in total 80-something organizations that were included in this initiative. But like I mentioned, we have now phase 2 that we are working on the methodology. And like the president mentioned last week, the information will be provided once the methodology has been established.
So you talked about phase 1 and phase 2. Do you anticipate that the nature of our RGC will change over the next, let's say, few years?
So it is a multi-year with amount really per calendar year well established in the budget. But like I was saying, this is something that all organizations should be doing every year to look at their own funding model and making sure that they are effective in that way.
Yeah. How collaborative have you found the relationship between TBS and other departments around this initiative? Is everyone embracing it, or is it considered more as an instruction coming down, or is it an opportunity that we could work together to look at some of the policy changes, some of the enabling tools, as well as, the desire to work together?
So we have been working very closely, my team, with all organizations, trying to understand their unique perspective, their unique circumstances, and that was all factored in the review that that the president was able to table at the end of February.
So that's great. So I'll take it, and I only got about 20 seconds. I take it, so it was a collaborative approach. You look at the uniqueness of each one of the departments. You sat down and you figure out where is the greatest opportunity from different levels, whether operational, campus, et cetera, and you collectively put that program together.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. And I yield the rest of the 2 seconds back to you.
Thank you for your generosity, as always, Mr. Jory.
Well, you only gave 1 second to Madame Dubrow and I'm giving you 2 seconds, so that is generous.
You're now in deficit. Mrs. Vignola for 2.5, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Boudreau, could you remind us more or less how much money was spent in consultants last year and how much are expected for this year? If we look at the public accounts for last year, management consulting, so professional services, is a huge amount, $19 billion. But within this $19 billion, we have 14 different categories. One of them is management consulting. This amount represents 5% of the $19 billion, so about $850 million, I believe. One moment. 838 million. Thank you. So if I look at the current budget, I didn't look at supplementary A, but if I look at the main estimates, they talk about the public service, 97,838,000, and of this, over 64 million is allocated training budget. And we see that consultants are receiving $838 million. We don't always have results over the longer term. So would it be better to say that we're going to professionalize our public service school in order to train people internally, public servants, that will be able to see what are the trends, to consult, and to stop going externally? I totally agree with your comment. Management consultants are hired usually on a punctual basis when the expertise does not exist within an organization. But with regards to training of the public service, I agree with you. We need to invest in this. Yes, because civil servants and managers in the civil service normally, when they reach that level in the public service, should have management skills, and they should be able to professionalize, to obtain training rather than obtaining outside support. This is my personal philosophy, but yes, and I do support your train of thought. My colleague here works closely with the public service school to obtain more detailed training for people who are working in the field of
Thank you.
Purchasing.
Correct for 2.5, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Returning to my previous line of questioning around the return to office directive, some of the feedback I'm hearing from public servants is that the physical space they're being asked to return to is not sufficient for them to have a productive workday. So talking about lack of physical space, being asked to share a desk with another employee, being in an environment where there isn't adequate privacy or ability to focus. And so recognizing that there are diverse workplaces across the public sector, obviously, and there's some very unusual ones where this wouldn't apply. But for an average office work environment, someone who's working at a desk 8 hours a day, does the public service have standards? Does the government have standards for what an employee should be able to expect in that environment in terms of noise, physical space, safety from workplace hazards, that sort of thing?
So in terms of standards, I think it's either, if you can go, PSPC would have those standards, but I'll say that there are challenges in certain buildings. Those challenges are not everywhere. There are many other areas where it's working out. We are giving a heads up of 4 months for organizations that have particular challenges. Some it's building, some it's technology, to work those through either with SSC and PSPC. And we are also urging departments to work with their UMCC, their union management committees, to ensure that the specificity of the issues that need to be managed in the next 4 months and so on are really discussed openly in the context of the implementation of this direction. So I don't know if you have anything to add in terms of those standards. I believe it's PSPC that would have those.
PSPC is the general manager for office across government, so they would set standards in terms of accommodation within buildings.
So those standards exist with PSPC?
So there's so they would set out sort of fit up for office space, but again, I know PSPC is right after us. I don't want to misspeak for them. So
okay. I'll hold fire until the next panel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Genwas, please, and then Mr. Sousa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Then Mr. Sousa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I assume I can start again, Chair. I want to thank the officials for being here, following up on my questions to the ministers, which related primarily to Indigenous procurement. In plain language, how does the government define an Indigenous business?
So it's a great question. In terms of Indigenous procurement programs, there's the procurement strategy for Indigenous businesses, which is a set-aside program that ISC manages, and they determine eligibility for that program, so they would be best positioned to answer that. For the 5%, to be eligible, they have to be registered on the Indigenous Business Directory or registered on a Modern Treaty beneficiary business list.
Okay, so there may and likely are businesses that are owned by Indigenous people or businesses that would meet the criteria that are not registered for whatever reason because they're not aware of it, they haven't been able to fill out the paperwork, whatever the case may be.
It's possible.
Okay. I was looking through some of the documents that this committee has gotten on this issue and was curious to know what percentage of registered Indigenous businesses are located in versus outside of the National Capital Region.
I wouldn't have that answer. That would be ISC that would have that answer because they manage the directory.
Okay. I'd be curious to know that, and then also what percentage of those businesses are actually located in Indigenous communities. I understand you don't have that information, but are you able to get that and share it with the committee? We don't have those officials coming before us typically. So.
We'd have to follow up with the ISC.
We will follow up with the organization and try to come back to the committee.
Okay, can that be registered as a request for information, Chair? When we'll get that information one way or the other. The minister talked in her testimony about the subcontracting requirement, and the procurement minister didn't even seem to know this, but your minister did. That the 1/3 requirement that she mentioned, which is that if an Indigenous business receives contracts as part of that set aside, that 1/3 of the subcontracts have to be Indigenous. Presumably, they have to also be on the same list. We have requested information at this committee about subcontractors, and in almost every case, we've received no information from departments about subcontracting. That seems to not be being identified or tracked at all. Am I correct in understanding from that there is no oversight around whether or not this requirement is met?
So maybe I'll take the question. So for PSIB, as you've correctly identified, 33% requirement. So 33% of the total contract value must be done by a business that is either owned or controlled, 51%. In terms of verifying...
So just to clarify, and on the list? Or if they are owned and controlled but not on the list, would they qualify for that 1/3?
So they would have to be, sorry, I'm getting my PSIB stuff out. They would either have to be on the list or listed on a modern treaty business list or directory.
So they would have to meet the criteria for the set aside in order to get the 1/3.
Correct.
Okay.
And then at 51% owned or controlled, and 33% of the total value of the contract must be done by that business. And so in terms of verifying it, it should be part of the terms and conditions of the contract. And then in addition, ISC can do post audits to verify the 33%.
ISC can do post audits. How often do those post audits?
That would be a question for ISC. I can tell you that if the client department can request a post audit of ISC, but in terms of how often or how that's triggered, that's really for ISC.
Okay, since you're here at Treasury Board, how often have you requested a post audit?
Well, I don't manage contracts. So
Okay, well,
turn
not
to the CFO.
The department.
Thank you for the question. Actually, since this policy came into place, TBS has not requested any post audit.
Okay. We requested subcontracting information. We got almost none. The only way that would be being verified is either keeping track of those subcontracts so others could look at it, or having those post audits done. And we hear that TBS has not requested any post audits. So I think that underlines my concern that this core requirement in relation to the program, ensuring that there's actually business opportunities going to Indigenous peoples. This underlines my core concern that that's not actually being checked in any meaningful way.
Thanks very much. Mr. Sousa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, and congratulations again on your promotion. How many contracts does the government do?
Contract amendments in any given year is close to 400,000 possibly.
400,000 possibly.
Correct. Yeah.
And there was some discussion around the declarations of conflict, right? That people voluntarily come forward saying, hey, I don't know if I can deal with this particular contract. And how many, you said there was about 79 out of 400,000?
So those may be two different issues, which is and I'll turn to my OCRO friends here, which is it is incumbent upon an employee, if they feel that they may be in a conflict of interest, to submit a conflict of interest form to have it assessed, and if necessary, either not take a contract, or there would be mitigation measures that are put in place to in relationship to that conflict of interest declaration that's been submitted.
Correct. So there's anything untoward in doing so? Is that a normal practice? Is that an appropriate thing for us to take?
I'll turn it to Heidi.
Yes, it is the responsibility of the employee to assess and understand if they may have a perceived or potential conflict of interest, and to use the appropriate system and supports in order to report that.
So it's more of an issue if they don't declare.
Yes.
Right. And so out of the 400,000, that all the contracts that are done, a number of them have come forward noting, hey, this could be an issue. So they've taken the proper steps to protect the integrity of the system, the integrity of government, and themselves, right, in this case. So when we're looking in regards to the federal government to reduce the amount of, well, actually, is there recent policy augmentations or anything in regards to this that have been put forward?
So last week, there's a mandatory procedure that was announced. And as I was explaining, in procurement, there's the procurement officer who executes the process, but there's the person who wants the actual procurement. And so what we've done is we're embedding into the approval process that before a contract gets signed, that person, we call them the business owner, signs off that they understand the contract. And part of that is that they are not in a conflict of interest themselves. So that's embedded. They will have to sign off before a contract is signed.
And those are measures ensure safety and security too. Can you talk about the information of the networks then? Can you talk about the augmentation or the recent policy implementation that Treasury Board's taken to ensure that there's safety and security for Canadian information within the Government of Canada network?
So I'll give you a quick answer, and then maybe you can see if I'm hitting what you're after here. But we put a number of safeguards in place, both across the technologies and in terms of how we manage people's data, to make sure that it is not compromised either through a cyber attack or by an inadvertent privacy breach or something like that. But is there something particular you're trying to?
Well, I'm just trying to ensure that systems are in place, given the so many contracts, there's so many engagements, that there are steps taken to protect the interests of the stakeholders involved, the individuals involved, as well as the employees and the staff. And any declaration of information that's brought forward because it has become public, that safeguards are in place. And yeah,
100%. I mean, we have 40 years of operating within the construct of the Privacy Act and a fairly robust policy piece that sits underneath the legislation. And it's one of those fundamental things that we train public servants on, to understand where you have to monitor for risks to individual information. As well, on the cyber side, we build fairly high level of safeguards into our technology systems to avoid inadvertent releases. The reality is, as I was saying to a question earlier, we live in a world where there are constant threats of this. So there are always incidents, both on the cyber side and on the privacy side, that have to be managed. But we have strong safeguards in place across the system.
in regards to consultants, a lot of discussions around this table has been around the system of procurement and the degree of interchange between consultants and the contractors and the subcontractors and so forth. What is the effort being taken by the federal government to reduce the amount of staff augmentation within public service and rather focus on building skills and capabilities within the public service ranks? Right? There's a lack of capacity within the system, and that's why hence consultants are taken in.
Yeah, I'm afraid we don't have time for a response, but perhaps you can get back to us as best as you're able to in writing. Witnesses, thank you very much for being with us again. It's been a long time since we last saw you. Anyways, we'll suspend for about 5 minutes and bring forward the next round. comments. I understand we have an opening statement from Ms. Reza. The floor is yours for 5 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss PSPC's main estimates for fiscal year 2024-2025. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional unceded territories of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Today, I'm joined by Associate Deputy Minister Alex Bonet, Assistant Deputy Minister Simon Page, Assistant Deputy Minister Catherine Poulin, Assistant Deputy Minister Dominique Laporte, and Chief Financial Officer Wojo Zelanka. Mr. Chair, PSPC has a wide-ranging mandate related to government procurements, managing government buildings, administering pay and pensions for the public service, and more. In order to support these activities, PSPC is requesting a net amount of $4.8 billion through these estimates. This is a net increase of $449 million from the previous year. The majority of that amount, more than $3.3 billion, will be spent on property and infrastructure activities, including major rehabilitation projects across the country. $767.9 million is for payments and accounting initiatives, which include supporting the Government of Canada's pay administration program. PSPC remains dedicated to achieving pay stabilization and eliminating the backlog of pay issues. And, as this committee has heard, we are also making progress on the next generation human resources and pay system. Mr. Chair, $181.7 million is being sought for the running of important procurements. This includes our work with key partners advancing the National Shipbuilding Strategy and other key defense procurements. It also includes our continued work to modernize the federal procurement system with a focus on increasing the participation of small and medium-sized businesses, as well as suppliers from underrepresented groups, including Indigenous businesses. The current focus is to ensure that 5% of the value of federal contracts are awarded to Indigenous businesses. Indigenous Services Canada is the federal department responsible for procurement strategy for Indigenous businesses and has determined that the government on the whole is exceeding the target. De plus, Monsieur le Président, SPAC
Mr. Chair, PSPC is looking at ways to increase rigor within federal procurement, particularly for professional services. As you are aware, PSPC leads on more complex and higher-risk procurements using its commodity expertise and skilled workforce. Moreover, PSPC establishes government-wide procurement vehicles and strategies in order to enable efficiencies in departments. We've made several improvements to our processes and procedures based on recent reports from the Procurement Ombudsman and the Auditor General, as well as our internal reviews, particularly when it comes to implementing better record-keeping and transparency to advance process controls. The new Officer of Supplier Integrity and Compliance is now in effect as of May 31st, which will help us better respond to supplier misconduct and unethical behavior. As for detecting cases of fraud, PSPC continues to refine and expand the use of our tools, including data analytics. As has been raised, we've already referred several cases of fraudulent overbilling to the RCMP in 2022, 2023, and 2024, and a number of other internal investigations are underway. While those investigations are ongoing, I can tell you that they will also be referred to the RCMP where appropriate as more information is uncovered.
I'd also like to note, as part of the refocusing of government spending initiative for this fiscal year, the planned spending reduction for PSPC will be $148.2 million. Mr. Chair, the department has many other priorities stemming from Budget 2024. That includes leading on the new public lands for homes plan, for which the department is now working out the details. Budget 2024 also featured proposed funds to support Laboratories Canada and parliamentary precinct projects, as well as new funds to move forward on a new pay and HR system and to expand the Translation Bureau's capacity. Mr. Chair, we're pleased to answer your questions about the work underway at PSPC and our main estimates. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Block, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome here yet again. I know you have been here on numerous occasions as a result of the many studies that we have undertaken. And I do note that in your departmental plan, fraud and other wrongdoing remains a key risk for your department, and that, as well noted in the departmental plan, PSPC is taking steps to strengthen its approach to better know who the Government of Canada conducts business with and the potential risks that they may pose. So, Ms. Reza, you just stated in your opening remarks that there are a number of other investigations taking place, and if and when necessary, they will be referred to the RCMP when that is determined. Now, we know a few weeks ago it was announced, and maybe a number of weeks ago it was announced that 3 names had been referred to the RCMP for investigation related to approximately $5 million worth of contracts. What was the reason for the referral to the RCMP?
Thank you very much for the question. As you noted, we do have a very strong commitment to detecting, preventing, and looking for fraud. So as part of some of the recent initiatives that we've seen since about 2018, 2020, we've really been using data analytic tools. So as part of that, we were able to use that tool set to look at data analytics, mine the data, and find cases of overbilling.
So it was overbilling that was the reason for you to refer these cases to the RCMP?
That is correct.
Thank you. So what wrongdoing, so that was the wrongdoing that was detected that prompted you to refer this to the RCMP. Has the RCMP confirmed that they are investigating or are charging these individuals?
Let me start by saying that once we refer the cases to the RCMP, and there's been 4 that have been referred to since 2022, that now becomes a matter of RCMP investigation. We have no insight into it, but if you I'll just turn. Est-ce que quelque chose à rajouter?
No, you have covered it very well, so it's now in the hands of the RCMP in order for them to pursue or not.
Thank you. I know last week the minister said that we could expect future announcements. Has the department identified any other cases that may be referred to the RCMP, or are those investigations still underway, as you stated in your opening statement?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. Yes, they're still underway, and they're still in the range that was publicly announced, I think, in March of between 5 and 10.
Thank you. It has been 100 days since the Conservative Arrive Scam motion was passed to get money back from the fraudsters. What is the role of PSPC, if any, in recovering these funds?
Thank you very much for the question. We would support CBSA in terms of if they have found any ineligible actions, any inaccuracies, any fraud, we would support them as a contract authority to be able to seek restitution. Letters to that effect have gone out to the suppliers.
So letters have gone out, and you support CBSA. Are you aware if any money has been recovered to date?
Thank you very much for the question. I am not aware if any money has been recovered. I don't want to speculate at committee, but I would anticipate that there would be a result of the RCMP investigation.
Thank you. I know that the government couldn't spend money fast enough on Arrive Scam when they felt it needed to get out the door, and yet now I think we're waiting a fair length of time in order to have that money recouped. I want to turn to another other testimony that was provided at a previous committee. I believe, Ms. Reza, you were in attendance when we were discussing the Procurement Ombudsman's report on the government's contracting with McKinsey. And of particular focus was the National Master Standing Offer that was established by the government for McKinsey's benchmarking services. And I know at that time you were asked about one of the call-ups from ESDC that was worth $5.7 million that was personally approved by the Minister of PSPC at that time. And the Procurement Ombudsman found that the responses to the Treasury Board's 7 standard questions when a large procurement is conducted, and I'll quote, did not establish a link between McKinsey's exclusive rights to its benchmarking solutions and ESD's operational requirements, end quote. He also stated that ESDC's reasoning did not provide a sufficient basis for PSPC to reasonably conclude that McKinsey held exclusive rights to the extent that it was the only supplier able to supply the benchmarking services. And I know, Ms. Reza, you were the one who sent the justification to the minister. We have now seen that document. And again, there is no sufficient justification for the call-up, simply a string of statements with no corroborating evidence that the call-up was necessary. In fact, I will say there are 3 pages for submission data to justify the contract. And for this $5.7 million contract, the first page was not filled out fully. How do you reconcile this? Do you have any documentation showing how the justification was made that was not offered to the Ombudsman at the time of his report?
Thank you very much for the question. I want to start at the place that because of the financial delegation, the value of the contract being above officials, it went to the minister in that context. The procurement officer signed off that the justification provided was satisfactory. The fact that there are no resellers of McKinsey's benchmarking services, that it's a proprietary data set, and that furthermore, from a Treasury Board policy on large transformation projects, having that independent benchmark is required. The justification from a PSPC perspective and that of the client was sound. I can pause here.
I'm afraid that's our time. Ms. Atwin, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues and to Ms. Reza and officials for joining us again today. So roughly 70%, which is $3.3 billion of Public Services and Procurement Canada's requested authorities for 2024-25 will be for the core responsibility of property and infrastructure. This core responsibility also accounts for roughly 80%, $3.2 billion of the department's revenues and other reductions. How would the department use these funds to improve access to affordable housing? Emphasis on the affordable.
Thank you very much for the question. I'll start and then I'll turn the floor over to the Chief Financial Officer. The appropriations that you referred to are part of the ongoing government business of running our real property portfolio. PSPC is the largest office holder in the Government of Canada, and we also undertake many large construction projects, as you see here on Parliament Hill, building the Science and Infrastructure subset and Laboratories Canada, and other large construction projects. So that money is mostly apportioned to keeping those large capital projects on track and moving to completion. In terms of affordable housing, Budget 2024 has announced new measures that will provide PSPC with the capacity to actually move into this space, look at some of the lands that we have and actually mobilize and accelerate how to use those lands and repurpose them into affordable housing. Wojo, did you?
So as the Deputy Minister stated, in prior years, we don't really have funding for affordable housing. It's mostly what has been announced in this year's budget. So it's really very focused on the Lands for Housing initiatives in the budget announcements, and those will be reflected through supplementary estimates, and they're not reflected in our main estimates.
Great, thank you. And do you know if there's consideration for a more ambitious target than the 54% for the indicator of the percentage of Crown-owned buildings that are in fair or better condition?
Thank you very much for the question. This is an excellent question because there is established a ladder in terms of the building conditions. So we look to try to say to fair to moderate to make sure that we can modernize the workspace, to make sure that we can look at offsetting our carbon emissions. So there's a whole kind of grade in there of effort and activity. And as you indicated, that is our target, but it may be reviewed during the upcoming year, especially as we move to try to convert some of our office holdings into housing.
Great. And when does the federal government expect to achieve a 100% total accessibility score for Crown-owned buildings in line with the new standard?
It's Do you? We'll have to come back to you in writing with that question. Thank you, or answer.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. And what proportion of the funds requested in these estimates will be allocated to improving the capacity of the Translation Bureau? We've run into a few issues kind of with a lot of our documents for this committee in particular, but I know it's something we're considering as a whole of government. So as there, conversations about improving that capacity?
Thank you very much for that question. PSPC is the home of the Translation Bureau of the Government of Canada. And as you know, we have a lot of competing priorities, be it Parliament, be it various departments who use our services. Budget 2024 gave the Bureau some O&M for about $35 million worth of work, which will help with some of the backlogs we're experiencing, will help attract some new talent for translation and for interpreters in various different elements and different formats. It's super important to us. I know that we have been trying to keep up with the timelines for certain documents, and I know that I myself have looked over the last 3 or 4 years to see the level and the volume of translation that we're doing here for the houses as well as for supporting department efforts. So this money will be a welcome reprieve to help us. And I also think that there was an intent to put together some small scholarships to be able to attract translators from across the country. And Dominique, je sais pas si vous avez...
Good for now.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I was actually at a funding announcement this morning with regards to artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. So I'm just curious, what risks, if any, have you identified concerning the Translation Bureau's increased use of artificial intelligence solutions such as the GC Lingua?
Thank you very much. I'll start and then I'll turn to Dominique. We actually find it's a very powerful tool to be able to help the translators reduce what has already been translated by them and focus on kind of some of the new language coming out, some of the more high yield complex where that nuance and that human interaction is important. Dominique?
Yes, no, happy to complement that. So we've seen huge progress with respect to AI over the last few years. So for translation, the DM did mention that it's a tool, and we believe in humans. So people can increase productivity, but they need to be able to leverage those tools. And at the end, there's always basically a professional translator that we want to make sure that this person is going to be reviewing the material before it's being sent to the client.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I believe in people as well, but we certainly have the tools that we can harness to help us do our work. But I think that's very close to my time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Mrs. Reza, I'm going to ask the same question to you that I asked to the minister last week with regards to lands and buildings. And so my concern was that despite the sale, these buildings might remain federal property. This would mean that it's not necessarily the rules and regulations of the municipality or the province that would be applied. So could you reassure me? So if you're divesting yourselves of a land or a building, it's not the federal laws that will apply, but rather municipal regulations or provincial ones? Thank you for the question. I took a note. I think it was last Wednesday that we were here, and I noted the question, and we're looking at different scenarios. We are implementing a new program for housing. We have to understand different scenarios, and so I've taken note of this, and we'll come back once we have more detail. Thank you. Because with regards to housing, the federal government has no protection to protect owners or renters. So if the federal government had to be responsible, this might lead to a huge imbroglio in Quebec and probably elsewhere in Canada as well. I'm going to now go ahead with what you were talking about, ethics and compliance of suppliers, that it's important to check this. And we've seen that the issue perhaps is not only on a level of suppliers, but you could have situations where some civil servants might also be involved. in ethical issues or issues linked to compliance, how to make sure that civil servants are ethically responsible and compliant with laws, and that it not be suppliers that will be penalized, but rather the person who is not compliant with the regulations? Yes, answer. I think that with the Treasury Board, you spoke about the Public Service School of Canada. I think that it's up to all civil servants to be aware of their responsibilities with regards to values and ethics. We have begun changing our own internal practices to have more training so that employees will be full aware of their responsibilities when it comes to declaring conflicts of interest, for example. Thank you. I'm going to move on with good news that we had in Quebec recently, the repurchase of the Quebec Bridge, and I look and the expenditure budget is not there because this is new. If I look at Supplementary A, I don't see it. We know that the Quebec Bridge is UNESCO recognized and it's in very, very poor shape, and it will take a lot of money in order to update and renovate and restore this bridge. So when are we going to see this money, and how much per year are contracts, or do we already have a call for tenders from the federal government for the Quebec Bridge? Thank you. I'm going to check, but I don't think that we've had a call to tender yet. We have to work with key departments for this. I think that it will be Infrastructure Canada, and we will check for you. And then contracts will be awarded for restoration, whatever is required. We will be there. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Page, Mirabel. Mirabel is important for aeronautics, especially with regard to training and maintenance of aircraft. With the contracts for F-35s, is Mirabel keeping it standing with regards to repairs and maintenance of these aircraft? Thank you very much for the question. So the question comes with the F-35 project. The F-35 project, as you know, is being implemented, and we are expecting to receive the first aircraft in 2026, 2027. As for the economic spin-offs for Canada, this will be over several different steps. We have a step now where we have to find a place for maintenance of motors, for a warehouse for that. So we started a joint program office. We have a memorandum. There is going to be a partnership for this, and different companies throughout Canada will be involved in this process for selection. Yes, but Mirabel already has a lot of expertise in this field. So can I understand that this expertise is more or less recognized and could, in fact, be forgotten? We are full aware of the expertise. We are using this expertise after the selection of the warehouse for the maintenance that I was speaking to. There will be other selections made. Also, one is called platform.
We're out of time, but perhaps on next in French. Mr. Bachrach, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our witnesses. In my questioning to the officials from the Treasury Board, we were talking about the Return to Work Directive and the process for ensuring that the physical spaces that employees are returning to are appropriate for their jobs. And my question was around what standards PSPC utilizes in that process, because I'm hearing from public sector employees who are concerned that the spaces they're being asked to return to, are not always going to be appropriate for the tasks that they're asked to perform. So is there a defined standard for returning to an office environment that PSPC is utilizing?
Thank you very much. And I will start with one quick additional comment. We're doing two things at once. We're looking to reduce the portfolio by 50%, so to remove land, and that means that we're going to densify a lot of the buildings. In terms of the fit up that you ask about, we do two things. We follow provincial and federal building codes that are set, by various federal, provincial, territorial. The federal ones have an NRC, a National Research Council link. As it relates to the fit up, we also look at the industry standards for office space, and we're consistent. So we are moving to a new standard, and they're formalizing what that will look like. So it will go to be approximately 9 meters squared. Now, I would add that the key addition here is that not all office space is equal. You may need special purpose space, depending on the type of work you're in, depending on the type of, if you're dealing with highly sensitive legal matters, if there's national security. So it is not a standard that will be applied one size fits all, and every deputy head is going to be looking at how best to optimize that space so that employees have a space that's welcoming and accessible.
So for a generic office job, asking an employee to return to that office, they should expect about 9 meters squared per employee for their function?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. And in terms of the rest of the work environment, when it comes to privacy, the noise environment, the sound environment, that kind of thing, are there standards for that as well, or does it vary by workplace?
Again, I think that is going to be consistent with the federal standards that are established through the building codes, the provincial. It's like how many people, I heard you in your earlier comment talking about people who don't have desks. That's obviously not acceptable. And, we will be looking over the course of the remainder of the year to make sure that it's as seamless as possible as we go to unassigned.
There was a mention of a 4-month period that employers were being given to ensure that the new workspaces employees were being asked to return to were appropriate. Is 4 months enough time? It seems like when you're talking about renovations of buildings, that seems like an incredibly short amount of time.
I would agree with that statement. We have to make sure that, this currently is 2 to 3 days for employees. So there is enough space currently for 2 to 3, but in terms of 4 months, it will be ambitious. I've had discussions with TBS in terms of making sure that fall ramp up is, to the best of our ability, understanding that there will be some exceptions. There are some major buildings here in the National Capital Region that are under construction. So automatically we'll have to look at swing space. And the other point I would add, we talk about physical fit up, but that fit up has to be like the room here. There has to be tech in place. There has to be screens in place. So we're working very closely with Shared Services Canada to make sure that it is a holistic office.
I think when we're talking about an office building in downtown Ottawa, people have one sort of, vision of what that looks like in terms of bringing employees back to work. But in the area I represent, we're talking about federal government offices in rural communities in all sorts of different situations, some of them in very old buildings. And the employer is being asked to make these buildings ready to receive employees that have been working remotely. And we're hearing concerns from those employees who are concerned that the space is not going to meet their needs, that it's not going to be appropriate for the tasks they're asked to perform. Are there concerns in smaller communities that when we're dealing with older buildings and smaller buildings, that 4 months is not going to be adequate to meet people's needs?
Similar to the concerns here in the National Capital Region, absolutely. So I think there's 2 tracks, looking at it kind of in the various regions to see how best to optimize it so that the employee has an office to go to, that it's ready, that it's in place. Otherwise, there has to be some understanding of timelines. In terms of the region, another area that I find interesting is, do we centralize so that there's a hub? Do we continue with decentralize in rural areas? It's really looking at the best possible support for the employee and for service delivery.
And we've heard a variety of opinions on the net benefits of this directive. And I haven't seen any sort of empirical evidence of the benefits that we're trying to secure as a government. Can you provide to the committee what empirical analysis has been done around things like productivity and satisfaction, those kinds of things? Because it seems to me if a lot of the workforce is upset about the directive and they're coming back to the workplace and being squeezed into these offices in the next 4 months, that actually we're going to have a less productive workforce in the public service than we did before. How I guess the first question is, what's the empirical evidence? And then the second question is, what's the plan for managing that dynamic?
I'm afraid
I just have a way
option
of
C,
ending
there's no
with a
there's no
question.
time for an answer.
I'll just let it linger.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Mrs. Block, please, for 5.
Thank you, Chair and Ms. Reza. I am going to circle back to the subject of my questions in my first round of questioning. And I guess what I'm really grappling with is how do we reconcile the fact that PSPC, you yourself as the Deputy Minister, and the Ombudsman appear to completely disagree with what can be termed as robust justification when it comes to contracting. And as I stated earlier, the Ombuds found that the answers to the 7 Treasury Board questions were insufficient. Can you tell us who was the contracting officer that you referenced in the memo to the minister that appeared satisfied with the answers to those 7 Treasury Board questions?
Thank you very much. I think it is important to note that PSPC and the deputy, myself, have accepted all the recommendations of the procurement ombudsman. So I don't want there to be a sense that there's light. So I think that's important because we welcome that kind of sunlight on our practices to make sure we have rigor. We have submitted to the committee the names of all the procurement officers. And I would just turn for a moment to see if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, if I may add also, we've learned a lot from these reports, and I would say that the challenge function that is being played right now by our contracting officer is much greater. The OPU kind of clearly made that very clear that there was this challenge function to play. So, in future sole source, we've learned from the OPO, and we're also kind of learning and tweaking the process accordingly.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. You've accepted the recommendations, and going forward, you're going to look towards implementing them. But I do sense that there's a bit of a disagreement between what the Ombudsman found in this particular case, this particular contract, and what you yourself believe to have been robust justification for why McKinsey was the only contractor that would have been able to hold the exclusive rights to this contract. Can you tell me what mechanisms are in place for PSPC to push back on, say, another department's justification if you don't believe that they've provided robust justification? What are the mechanisms in place to push back on them?
Thank you very much for the question. In fact, in the example that you just cited, the procurement officer did push back and actually drill down on those 7 questions and ask for additional information. So that's an example. There's a opportunity to advise their manager and their supervisor that they don't agree with the client. There's an opportunity with some of the new rules that have been put in place by Treasury Board to emphasize the role of the manager in the client department. As I'm sure the committee is seized with, there are roles and responsibilities both for procurement as the client, the contracting authority, and the client. And so understanding better and making sure it's clear of the escalation around it and what is actually a way to document the rigor. I think this is an area that I have learned a lot in the last year and a half around the rigor of the documentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the fact that you are taking this to heart and have been learning much around the rigor that needs to be applied. I do have one last question. Will you provide the committee with a copy of the 7 Treasury Board questions, the answers that were provided to justify this particular contract, and the further justification that was sought by the contracting officer?
Certainly, I thought it had been, but I would be happy to confirm.
Thank you.
Mr. Kuzmarchuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much once again for being with us in front of committee. You've always been ready to come here, testify, provide insights, answer questions. I just wanted to say thank you for the tremendous work that you do. I did want to talk a little bit about the Translation Bureau and talk about some of the funding that's been allocated for the Translation Bureau and how are we boosting the work of the Translation Bureau. And specifically, knowing that this month, June, is Deaf-Blind Awareness Month, I wanted to ask what types of additional services are we implementing to ensure access to information to Canadians who are deaf, deaf-blind, and deafened?
Thank you very much for the question. I'll start and then I'll turn to Dominique. One of the things that's key and I think helpful for this committee to be aware of is that every day we see increasing demands for the services of the Translation Bureau. Not only in the written form, but with our interpreters, as well as providing service to all Canadians. So for example, now we're working on making sure that we have our meetings, we have availability for translation in both English and French for the deaf community, and we're looking at more and more access along these lines. So I'm glad you raised it. I would also note that the demand keeps going up for all the services. And while we received $35 million from the budget, we are continuing to look at how best to allocate it. And I think a real example for this committee to consider is that in 2020, so 4 years ago, we spent about $20 million a year in terms of translation costs for the House, for the Senate and the House of Commons. We're going to be at $50 million this year. And we absorbed that internally. So it's very important that we're able to provide services to people that need it for the interpretation, for the translation. And on interpretation, I'm going to turn to Dominique, who is now the ADM of procurement, used to be the CEO of the Translation Bureau. So, à vous, monsieur.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So a lot of new safety measures have been put in place for interpreters, as you know, for language interpreters in the room. So over the last 3-4 years, new measures have been put in place. The Translation Bureau is also looking at increasing capacity, taking a lot of steps to increase the capacity for interpretation. And you spoke also about sign language interpreter. This is oftentimes, I would say, hidden jewel that we're not necessarily, hidden gem that we're not necessarily aware that the translation that PSPC does on a day-to-day basis. We provide sign language interpretation for those who are deaf, who cannot necessarily hear, government employees, when we have also conference. So, of course, there's also the need to make sure that, we're able to train a new generation of sign interpreters, and additional funding could be used for that. So, also we've been liaising with the Chief Accessibility Officer of Canada to make sure that the needs are properly understood. So again, I would say a lot of training, and in terms of also recruitment with the university, scholarship also, those are some of the examples that will be done with the new funding.
That's wonderful. I do appreciate the answer. And if you're able to provide the committee, perhaps in a written response, just to paint a picture for us, let's say the last 5 years or the last 3 years, how the demand on for translation services has increased. So that would be in terms of the volume of requests, pages, things like that. That would help our committee and our work as well, too, if you can provide that for us. Just paint a picture of this increase in demand for translation services. Wanted to change gears and talk about greenhouse gas emissions. PSPC reduced greenhouse gas emissions, as I understand it, by 59.9%. It's interesting, Mexico just elected the first woman president, but also elected the first climate scientist, I believe, to the role of president. This is President Claudia Sheinbaum, who actually was a co-author of one of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate reports. I mean, here in Canada, we have a leader of the opposition, conservative opposition, that doesn't even believe in climate change, doesn't believe in action on climate change. And so I just wanted to ask you what PSPC is doing to help us fight climate change, if you can paint a picture for us on that.
Certainly. As you know, PSPC is the real property owner of the Government of Canada. There are other custodian departments, but we are among the largest, and we have a responsibility for greening government operations. So we spoke earlier about return to the office. What does that look like in terms of our carbon reduction, in terms of what we're doing here, for example, in the parliamentary precinct with the energy savings, the ESAP program. So there are you Yeah, so there is a lot, and PSPC is quarterbacking that and has seen a lot of building reductions, and at the same time looking at new building materials.
Thanks very much. Mrs. Vignola, please, for 2.5.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have so many questions. We spoke about the modernization initiatives for contracts. We asked how this would be simplified, but my main concern has to do with how to adapt to the realities of small and medium-sized businesses. Sometimes they are few people, a small number of people, but to fill out all this paperwork requires endless hours of work. So how can we simplify and adapt for SMEs and their realities with this initiative? Thank you. This is a question that we ask regularly because we are looking at the regulations, the implications, the requirements of the policy. It's hard because it does become a burden. So to find a way to modernize and to not have such a heavy load, I believe you've thought about the e-procurement system, and this will help a lot because it does give the providers the opportunity to fill in data once and then to change once when required. So each time, right now, they have to update everything. So you've already heard about security-related issues, oftentimes, and 99.9% of the time, security is there, but it's perhaps not in the file. So perhaps Dominique has something to add. No, thank you. I have to go to my next question, but thank you. Right now, in Gatineau Hall, we see Secteur du Partage is under renovation. There's a building that seems to be completed. Well, there's windows anyways. And can you tell me, these are not just changing windows, so it's beautiful to have new windows, but what else is being renovated, and how long is it going to take, and what is the cost?
We have about 10 seconds. Perhaps it's something you could provide in writing to us, because it seems to be a rather large answer.
Parce que ça, c'était où il y avait tellement de défis de construction.
Yes, there were a lot of challenges, but also we're doing things inside. But it's to make sure that outside it is compliant with standards.
Mr. Bachrach, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 4.5 or so years ago, one of the first meetings I had with the then Transport Minister, Marc Garneau, was about a federal property on Haida Gwaii, the Sandspit Inn, which is owned by Transport Canada. And the community has been trying to get it back in community hands. It was once operated by the community as a hotel, and when the lease wasn't renewed, that process has been ongoing for over 4 years. So, talking about this desire to reduce the footprint of public sector buildings by 50%, it looks very different in rural communities. And it seems like a 4.5-year process that still hasn't completed to divest the government of this property that could be used for the benefit of the community seems like a long time. And I hear all sorts of stories about studies being done that seem to take forever, and there's lots of poking and prodding going on. But I'm wondering, with this new mandate to create housing, to use federal properties to meet community goals, what is being done to accelerate those processes? Because they seem to go at a snail's pace.
Thank you very much. And I'm so glad you mentioned the Sandspit Inn, because I wrote Sandspit on my notes, and I was looking at it earlier, but I had not put in. So now I have that context. I think there's two things to be aware of. Traditionally, it's taken us approximately 9 years as a government of Canada to dispose of a property. It has to be circulated. People have to put up their hands for an expression of interest. In the new model, what we're going to try to do is avoid the disposal process and actually look at, using surplus lands to build affordable housing and have a program around that, our housing program. So I took careful note in the earlier testimony around expression of interest. That is something that we're working on every day. What does initial expression of interest look like so the community can get to us and we can get to the community and build those criteria? We're not going to get everything. We're going to try to get as much as possible. So we're going to hear what is helpful to the community. And going back to, the location of this property in question, having an inventory. There is a federal land registry that's maintained by TVS. We have actually mapped up that whole federal inventory, but to be able to make sure Transport Canada is coming to us saying, we want to dispose of this property and we want to engage the community. How can you, PSPC, help us accelerate that and remove the dwell time?
So can you go to them? You're going to wait for them to come to you? Or like, I guess we're 4.5 years in. You say it used to take 9 years. I'm just wondering how it can be accelerated, given that it's a legacy, it's in process. Can PSPC intervene and say, hey, you're working on this. Let's work together to get this done in the next 6 months so the community can get on this?
I'm afraid that's past our time. But another one to get back to us in writing, and I'm glad you've been writing notes about the San Spadin. Mr. Genuis, please, for 5.
Well, thank you, Chair. I too want to share my congratulations to the new President of Mexico. I'm sure the Prime Minister of Canada looks forward to showing off his socks at the next Three Amigos Summit. I wanted to ask about companies operating on the GC Strategies model. We've talked a lot about ArriveCan specifically, but we have also been able to identify that there seem to be many companies operating on essentially the same model. That is, very small companies, 1, 2, 3 individuals operating out of a residential address, and their business is getting government contracts. That's it. That's what they do. They get government contracts and subcontract. Is it the view of the Government of Canada that we should not be contracting to companies that are using the GC Strategies model, that instead we should be going more directly to the companies who do the actual work, or are you comfortable with this model continuing to be a big part of government procurement?
Thank you very much for the question. I think it's fair to say that it's been consistently asked of me for several appearances. And this IT staff augmentation, it doesn't have to be IT, but the staff augmentation model is used by every country, jurisdictions in Canada, and private sector. So it's a well-known model. In terms of the efficiency it provides to the Government of Canada, going directly to consultants may not be the most efficient way. That being said, I think the member actually asked this question to me several months ago, and I did start to look at whether or not we would have the capacity and what capacity we would need if we wanted to go right to individual suppliers. So staff augmentation is a legitimate type of business that we do, and we haven't to date looked at the size, understanding that is one of the key elements you bring, the small SME. We haven't used that as a rate limiting factor for competing.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask though, I mean, why is this staff augmentation or GC Strategies model necessary? It would seem to me that it shouldn't be that difficult to have a kind of a detailed database or inventory in government about the specific skills that exist out there. And it seems that this model is actually used to get around a perceived excessive complexity of procurement. That this model is used because somebody has an existing standing offer or an existing relationship with government. So it's actually a vehicle for getting around red tape, not a necessary part of the system. Why couldn't the government have internally the people who have an expertise on finding the appropriate outside consultants maintain a detailed database of that information? Why would that not be possible?
Thank you very much for the question. I think that there are 3 key points here, which is government HR staffing, making sure we have the right skill sets to do what you propose. 2 is the actual procurement. What is it that we're trying to bring in? What services we're trying to bring in? And 3rd is that project management piece. When I listen to the member, I think a lot about project management. We're trying to deliver a service to Canadians. We're going to need to bring in some temporary staff augmentation, be it IT, be it project management, be it pay. And traditionally, staff augmentation firms have been the most efficient way to bring all that together.
All right. Okay, I've asked this question a few times because I'm still sort of perplexed in general by the government's approach to this. It would seem that project management capacity in particular is something that there should be a significant amount of skill within the government. I do want to try to get one or a couple more questions in, though. So it seems that when I look at the documents we received on Indigenous procurement, that there are a couple companies that are getting an enormous amount of the contracts. Ottawa-based, in some cases, very, very small firms. How much do you think is too much? Like if 5% of the set aside is for, if there's a 5% set aside for Indigenous companies, and we're finding that a very small number of companies are getting a lot of those deals, are getting 3, 5, 7% of all of the contracts. Would that suggest a problem? And what percentage do you think would be too much of that overall share?
So short answer, please.
Thank you very much. Again, I heard the question asked and I started to think about it. We don't offer a cap on any company that competes for government business. So there's no similar approach in non-Indigenous firms. So I would not understand why it would be there for Indigenous firms. There's 50,000 Indigenous firms in Canada. Whether or not they're registered on the Indigenous procurement business list is for them to decide. Like, we try to encourage them to get that number up so we have more of a competitive bassin pool.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sousa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Deputy and team, for being here today. A lot of discussion around this table around procurement in regards to fraud and detection of fraud and safeguarding our positions to ensure that we take the proper measures going forward. Certainly in the 2024-2025 departmental plan, a lot of concern has been noted by the department, has been initiated by the department. And of course, a lot of discussions have been made by independent officers of the Crown, be it the Ombudsman and the Auditor General. So a couple of questions in regards to this. And I guess what I'm trying to get down to is the engagement by the committee versus the internal investigations that are undergoing. So do the targets of your investigation always know that they're being investigated? Do they know that they're under investigation?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm going to start and then I'll turn to Catherine. Understanding this has been an area of interest of this committee and other committees, we traditionally have a very aggressive stance towards fraud, whether it's in our own workforce, whether it is with suppliers. We have a lot of fraud detection and deterrence in place, and we talk about it a lot at PSPC because we are the department responsible for procurement, and the best disinfectant is sunlight. So we really spend a lot of time. Now, in terms of the individual investigations, I think the answer is it depends, but Catherine?
Thank you very much for the question. So when an internal investigation is started, at one point in time, the individual under investigation will be notified that it's under investigation. Because in those internal processes, we're trying to build due process and fairness to those people so they have the right to know what evidence are held against them and to reply to the allegation against them.
And so what happens then when, you tell me, when the RCMP gets involved, what is their caution to you? Like, what is it that concerns the investigator during an investigation?
Thank you very much for the question. So once we turn the investigation to the RCMP, our work is basically done. So it will be for the RCMP to decide what they are doing to do with our referral, and they do not necessarily inform us when and when they will take action on our cases.
Are there risks to the investigation when elected officials start to investigate the investigator or oversee the investigation when there's a proper due process in place?
Thank you so much for the question. I would say that, yes, there are big risks when this comes into the public domain because those people have the right to fair and a natural sense of justice. the RCMP or any other law enforcement agencies will want to take some investigation technique and approach. So to protect the integrity of those investigations, it's very important that those elements are being taken and kept private in order for them to allow them to do their job and to decide if element of criminality has been founded to lay charges against the people that may have defrauded the government of Canada.
And PSPC has obviously been engaged in a number of investigations of late. Do you cooperate with the Auditor General? Do you cooperate with the Ombudsman? Do you cooperate with the Ethics Commissioner? Like, are you engaged in these discussions to some extent?
We are certainly engaged in the discussion. Certainly, we support the procurement ombudsman, ombuds, the OAG. We respond, we're reactive, we share information, and we are proactive in many cases. As it relates to more of the RCMP, PSIC, je sais pas si tu veux rajouter quelque chose?
So we are cooperating, and moreover, we are sharing findings and best practices. We are making sure that people are aware of those cases without revealing any privacy item of those cases. We're making sure that we're working with OGDs also to leverage the capacity of preventing, detecting, and responding to those cases.
If you permit me to add, we also have a responsibility with the Competition Bureau and the RCMP. We run the contract fraud line, which is also another area where we're able to intake information and start to be able to do investigations, review, and refer matters.
Chair, my time is up. Please.
It is.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Witnesses, thanks for being with us again. Ms. Reza, just really quickly, I think what I'm hearing from a couple people just regarding the amount of contracts and the piece of going to a small amount is just, if there's a belief from your side that perhaps the system is broken, if we have so many Indigenous suppliers, but so few are actually winning so many, and not a response now, but if I could just put that to you, I think maybe that's a concern, but maybe next time we see you, we can follow up a bit more.
Yes, and we can invite ISK to join us as well. Because
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us again. We will dismiss you. Colleagues, I have 3 budgets I got to approve very quickly, please. First one is for, again, this is upper limit, $500 for, for Leah. Approved? Thank you. $1,750 upper limit, and this is for? SUPAs, including today. And the last one, 2000 for Canada Post, which includes the last week's. Yeah, okay, we're all good. Just quickly, Wednesday will be Mr. Doan. Monday, June 10th, will be the Auditor General with the McKinsey study, which we commissioned, so to speak. The 12th will be Red Tape. And 17th, right now, tentatively, looks like the PBO for SUPAs. The 19th will be Minister Anand. There's no SUP-As for PSPC, so we will not see them. And then 21st, we'll play Bears if we are still sitting. Then, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.